Next segment on the show is Operation Eagle's Wings. We call it Eagle Live. And one of the things that we were really impressed by, we do not have a live in-studio guest today, but I did an interview this summer with Joe Torillo, who is a surviving New York Fire Department firefighter, and he shares with us his story about surviving the collapse of the first tower, and then as he was being rescued and taken to safety, the second tower collapsed and he survived that as well. Now, there's going to be reference possibly in this interview about a 9/11 observance that we were planning in Bend. We had to cancel that because of lack of sponsorships, so just ignore that. This interview was done about late spring, early summer this year. But what he shares with us about what he was going through his mind, the reaction in New York City to the towers falling on 9/11, we just wanted to share that with you again because his comments are pretty powerful to talk to somebody who was at ground zero and get his thoughts. So let's go to that interview now with Joe Torillo, New York Fire Department firefighter, here on Eagle Live, Operation Eagle's Wings, honoring all veterans who serve and leaving no one behind. This is Operation Eagle's Wings. I'm Dave Adams. Today, the Patriot flag visited Bend, Oregon. The Patriot flag is an effort to take a flag and visit 50 states in 50 weeks to honor those who fell on September 11, 2001. It's a tribute to the armed forces, first responders, second responders, and the families of 9/11 and the fallen on the attacks on that fateful day, September 11th. The Patriot flag was donated to the World Memorial by a group of businessmen in Escondido, California. It began as an idea at a funeral in February of 2010 for a World War II veteran. And now that flag is traveling across the nation, 50 states, in 50 weeks. Earlier today, I had a chance to talk to retired Fire Department Lieutenant Joe Torillo. He worked with the New York Fire Department and was on duty the day that both towers fell, and in fact survived both of those trade tower calamities.
Well, there were 343 fire department members. I mean, if you wanted me to break it down, there were 250 firefighters, 47 lieutenants, 20 captains, 17 battalion chiefs, 1 deputy chief, 2 assistant chiefs, the chief of department, the first deputy commissioner, department chaplain, a fire marshal, and 2 paramedics. That's 343 members.
What was it like that day? Take us back to that day and relive that just a bit. I'm sure it was chaos on a scale that you probably never experienced before or since.
Well, you know, I was actually on my way to a big press conference that morning. I had gotten involved in a project with a company called Fisher-Price Toys. It was a very big day in New York. We were going to introduce a new rescue hero, a little children's action figure made by Fisher-Price Toys. He was going to be a New York City firefighter called Billy Blazes. And I chose the day earlier in the year because 9/11 is the emergency phone number in New York City. So this little rescue hero that we entered into a partnership that was going to raise money for our education program was being introduced at 9 o'clock on September 11, 2001, because it was going to be 9/11 Day in New York. And on my way to the press conference, somebody said a plane hit the World Trade Center. And I was thinking a little, maybe a little two-seater, Piper Cub or something. Maybe somebody just got his pilot's license and wanted to circle the tower on his first or her first solo flight and got a little too close and broke a window. But then I realized that, as soon as the word is out, a World Trade Center, a plane, every emergency vehicle is going to start rushing to the scene, and I'd probably get caught in all that traffic and not make my press conference, which was very important. And as I was going from Brooklyn, where fire department headquarters is situated, over a bridge into Manhattan, I was only about 1/8 of a mile away from the tower, and I could see the North Tower had about 8 or 9 floors of fire around the uppermost part of the building, on every side of the building. Then I realized that this can't be no little plane. This has to be a jet. And at that point, I knew that day would be like no other day anybody would ever remember. And instead of going to the press conference, I immediately made my way down to the World Trade Center area because my original firehouse was right across the street from the South Tower, although I had left there in 1996 when I was promoted to lieutenant. And I was there exactly 9 o'clock in the morning. and I borrowed a set of firefighting clothing from somebody who was off duty because I didn't have mine with me. I wasn't in that capacity that day. I was in an administrative position, and I ran out of the firehouse. I ran out about 25 feet, and I heard a noise. I looked up, and United Airlines Flight 175 came right over my head. I was right underneath it, and I watched it go through the South Tower. And at that point, I realized we were under a terrorist attack, and the first assessment I made was that everybody on the upper part of the building was going to die, and that, in fact, these buildings were going to collapse, but nobody could understand why I was saying that.
And that's eventually what happened. So how long was it from the time the second plane hit before it collapsed?
It was exactly 55 minutes, the year I was born.
This day has special significance for you, doesn't it?
Well, for me, because, I was the only one that survived the collapse of both towers. And, it's funny because I went to school for structural engineering. When I was in college, one of my professors, he was working on the Twin Towers as the concrete superintendent. And he was able to take me and the other engineering students. This is back, of course, going way back into the early 70s. He was able to take us on a class trip down to the World Trade Center as engineering students to study this new novel design of high-rise construction of the Twin Towers. And as engineering students, we were in awe of how lightweight and how flimsy these buildings were designed as compared to, say, the Empire State Building. And P.S., I graduate, college, and I take a test for the fire department, which was very competitive. I scored very well, and I became a firefighter. And when I graduated the academy, of all the 357 firehouses in New York City that they could arbitrarily assign me to, for reasons I'll never understand, they chose the firehouse across the street from the South Tower of the World Trade Center. So now I'm back as a firefighter and not an engineering student. So every day for the first 15 years of my career, I used to look out the window of the firehouse and stare at the towers and reminisce about the days when those buildings were going up. And so I had an affection for those buildings like very few people. And on the morning of September 11th, all that would come back to me in making an immediate assessment that the buildings are going to collapse. It was hard for people to understand why I was saying that. Nobody really knew my background, as far as education-wise. They just knew me as, just another firefighter. But, nonetheless, I knew we had a job to do, but I didn't really think the collapse was going to happen until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I really believe we had 5 to 6 hours to evacuate both towers and the surrounding buildings, and then the buildings would come down. But in less than an hour, in the evacuation effort, as I was outside the South Tower, right underneath it, the building just came down. I started running, and I got buried under it.
So you were actually buried under the debris?
Yep, they eventually found me, and then I got caught in the collapse of the second building.
So you actually survived the collapse of 2 buildings?
Exactly. When they dug me out, they put me on what's called a long spine board. It's like a stretcher made out of very stiff plastic, and they strapped me down. They thought I had a broken back and a broken neck, and they ran across the street to the complex on the other side of the World Trade Center, and behind that complex is the Hudson River that separated New York from New Jersey. And boats had come from New Jersey into Lower Manhattan to try and get people out of New York, which was the only way of getting people out. There were no buses, no trains, no cars. And they put me on the deck of the boat, and they were holding my head closed because a piece of steel went through the back of my head. And they're holding my head closed, and I'm laying on the deck of the boat, and all of a sudden we heard a loud boom, and everybody says, "Oh, my God, here comes the other tower." And everybody jumped off the boat into the river because like millions of pieces of glass were hitting the deck of the boat like razor blades. And somehow I broke free from the stretcher, and I felt the doorway. And I jumped into the doorway, not knowing I ended up diving headfirst into the engine room of the boat. And now, thousands and millions of pieces of glass just, burying the deck of the boat above me, and I'm buried down in the engine room all by myself.
So, boy, an amazing day. What was going through your mind at that moment? I'm sure you were just trying to get out of the way.
Well, my biggest fear, to be honest with you, I thought the boat was going to go underwater, and my biggest fear since I was a kid is to die by drowning, and I was all alone. I was in a lot of pain. I was losing a lot of blood. I was probably going to start losing consciousness, and maybe about a half hour later, I don't even know how much later it was, I heard banging on the deck of the boat above. People were jumping back on the boat. And I heard somebody say, "Start the engines," and somebody came down that steep flight of stairs that I dove head first, down, and in the darkness, he stepped on my chest, and I let out a loud scream because all my ribs are broken, and he shined the flashlight, and He says, "Oh my God!" He yelled up to the deck above, "There's a fireman down here. This guy's not going to make it." The captain came down, took one look at me, says, "If we don't get this boat out of here, this guy's not going to live." Eventually, they were able to get the boat out there, and it ended up in New Jersey, but I didn't know where I was. I woke up in an operating room, and I was in Jersey City Trauma Center, but I didn't know where I was.
9/11. What does it mean to New Yorkers today?
Well, it's something that obviously it's always somewhere in, some part of our mind. I think for the most part, most New Yorkers have gotten over it, but I think most New Yorkers that are old enough is something that they'll always remember if they remember nothing about their life in New York. It would be like, what would you say to a person, who lived a mile away from Pearl Harbor? I mean, if you ask them what do they remember most about their childhood living near Pearl Harbor, they're going to say December 7th, 1941.
Why is it important? Now, the Patriot flag was in Bend, Oregon today.
Okay.
Why is it important
I just got back from there this morning. I just got back from Estacada this morning.
Oh, so you were over here in Oregon. What do you think of Oregon?
Yeah. Well, I've been out there a number of times because, there's a nonprofit organization called Tribute to Honor that helps firefighters and police officers in their dire time of need, and I've been speaking, on their behalf for the last 10 years in the Portland, the Hillsborough area, Gresham, Clackamas County, Estacada. So I spoke in Estacada, and then I spoke in Eugene on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important to do programs like the Patriot flag and take the flag across the country and display it in 50 states in 50 days, and then to remember 9/11 with events like what we're planning here in Bend?
Well, I think what happened was, prior to 9/11, the patriotism in this country kind of fell asleep, I suspect, because, we were always insulated from these types of incidents. We've always heard stories about what went on in Israel and Northern Ireland, and they always just seemed kind of like fairy tales, because how could you believe something that never affected your life? And on September 11th, 2001, I think it was a wake-up call that, maybe we're as vulnerable as anybody else, in regards to terrorism. And I think it's important that after September 11, 2001, that we try to become the reunited States of America, because I think that united will survive, but divided, I think, will fall. And I think people forgot about how good of a country that they live in, but September 11th certainly was a wake-up call.
Okay. Now, here in Bend, Oregon, Operation Eagle's Wings is planning an event on 9/11 called 9/11 Remembered, A Nation Unites for Freedom. And if at all possible, we'd like to find some way to have you involved in it, either by video recording or audio recording, or a picture of you, or just sharing your story like we're doing now, and included as part of the ceremony.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I'll be in California on the 10th anniversary. I'll be speaking in Rancho Cucamonga. They're having a big ceremony, and I've already committed to that one, because I'm getting requested to speak all over the country on that day.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah, all the time. On September 11th, the anniversary, I'm never in New York. I'm always personalizing somebody else's event on another part of our country.
Okay. So we can do something via recording beforehand, maybe even use part of this interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what is going on at Ground Zero today? Are you still there?
Yeah. I'm a tour guide at Ground Zero. I'm a volunteer for the last 5 years. I represent the victims' families. So when people come to New York City for a visit, one of their destinations is Ground Zero, and I take them on a walking tour for about an hour and a half, and kind of tell them about the history of the Lower Manhattan area, and talk about the conception of the World Trade Center and the complex and the layout of that site, and all the idiosyncrasies of the construction process, the incident of September 11th, the rescue and recovery, the aftermath, and the rebuilding. And, people always ask, hey, what the heck is going on? We hear so many things. Well, we're in the rebuilding process right now. Because so many victims have never been found, where the towers once stood, they become known as the footprints of Ground Zero, and it's considered sacred land, because 1,155 victims have never been found or identified. There'll be no buildings built on the footprints. Instead, outlining the original dimensions of the towers on those footprints will be 30-foot deep cascading pools called reflecting absence, and water's going to spill down the side of the memorial walls into a void with the names of the victims all around. And as far as the buildings themselves, well, they'll no longer be Twin Towers as the icon of that site. Instead, it'll be the Freedom Tower, which is going to be 400 feet higher than what the towers were, or 33% bigger. The superstructure steel is about halfway up to the 54th floor already. It's due to be completed in 2014. It'll be 1,776 feet tall, representing the year 1776 when we won our independence from England. On the other side of Ground Zero will be 3 additional high-rise buildings. Number 7 World Trade Center, which was one of the buildings that collapsed that day at 5:20 in the evening, has already been rebuilt as of June 2006, and that building sits on the site as the old Number 7, which was a 47-story office building, but it's now a 54-story office building. There'll be a visitor center, a cultural arts center, a museum, and a mass transportation hub inside Ground Zero as well. Across the street, on the other side, opposite Number 7, they plan to put Number 5 World Trade Center, where the Deutsche Bank once stood, which was just fully dismantled because of the contamination inside that building from the collapse of the South Tower.
Okay, so we're rebuilding, and at the same time rebuilding, at the same time also building a memorial to remember those who died.
Yes. Yes, the memorial. Yeah, the memorial pools will have the names of the 2,752 victims.
Okay. In closing thoughts, what would you tell folks in America and the world to remember as we think about 9/11 and what happened that day? What should we remember?
I think the thing you got to remember is that all those innocent people who lost their lives and all the rescue workers that gave those lives, they were just, an average American, just like you and I, who did the right thing every single day. Whether or not they had a uniform or whether or not they had a chest of medals, every one of them was a hero to their family. And I think that we should never, never forget that day that rearranged the world of all of us, and always pay tribute, most of all, to the men and women of the military who have laid down their lives in the past defending freedom, and all those right now that are protecting us over in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Joe Torillo is a retired lieutenant from the New York Fire Department, a survivor from both collapses of the Twin Towers. I'm Dave Adams. Operation Eagle's Wings, honoring all who served and leaving no one behind. This is Operation Eagle's Wings. I'm Dave Adams. Today, And a very good morning. Welcome once again to Eagle Live, Operation Eagle's Wings, as we take a look at the issues affecting veterans. We wanted to share that with you once again, the story of Joe Torillo, his comments about being in Tower 1 when it fell, or having to be rescued from Tower 1, and then the amazing story of surviving the second tower collapse. That's Joe Torillo. You can see it on our YouTube account. We have about 160 videos now up on YouTube, and that's one of them. Another thing we want to share with you now is this was from a couple weeks ago. This is the returning at the Redmond airport of members of the 116th as they came back to Redmond. This is not just the other day. This was a couple weeks ago. But amazing, touching scenes of servicemen coming back and women coming back to friends and loved ones in Redmond. And we just wanted to share that with you again this morning. So here is some raw footage of the reunion of the troops returning from the 116th, returning back to Redmond a couple of weeks ago. Here's some of that footage.
Yeah, your waist here.
How are you?
Good, how are you? Welcome back, Pete. He's like, what's going
Johnny's going this way.
And so that's the 116th returning to Redmond. I just wanted to share some of those very, very touching scenes with you as the troops were coming out the airplane at the Redmond airport. Eagle Live is the second half hour of our morning show, and it's from 7:30 to 8 a.m. Pacific time. We are looking for guests from a veteran standpoint. If you serve veterans, are a veteran, and want to share your story, we would like to have you as a guest on this second half hour of our morning show, which is called Eagle Live. Again, the morning show, we are designing it to go 2 hours from 7 to 9 a.m. First half hour from 7 to 7:30 Pacific time will be TJN, the Jesus Network. It's time to change the planet. We take a look at Christian issues, such as we did with Joel Martinson, who is putting together a film series called Cultures of the Creator. We will do the morning show from Crossroads Church in Bend on the 28th, when that movie is shown to a local audience for the first time. The second half hour of the show from 7:30 to 8 is Eagle Live, where we take a look at veterans issues. Third half hour, 8 to 8:30 Pacific time, is The Pulse, and we want to go into a community and see what's going on in the community. For example, we're going to be in Myrtle Point, Oregon this weekend. We'll be leaving early Saturday morning and talking to people on the street and to see what's going on in Myrtle Point in that area of the coast. We're going to be going to the coast as well, which is just 26 miles from Myrtle Point, and see what God is doing and to just see what's going on in the community, what's happening with veterans, and what's happening to the community at large. And we'll be doing the morning show from either Myrtle Point or one of the cities in that area. That's this coming Monday for the whole 2-hour version of the show from 7 to 9 a.m. By design, the last half-hour segment from 8:30 to 9 will be the Pulse Open Mic, and we're going to be talking to businesses in whatever community we're at. We're going to invite 6 businesses in, each have 5 minutes apiece to talk about their business challenges. If you're a business and like to be on that segment, let us know. If you can't be here during the live portion of the show, we can videotape it and include it in the broadcast. We do want to thank once again Bentel, EVM Media, powered by Bentel. Great folks there. Strongly encourage that if you're looking especially for business, high-speed internet, talk to the good folks at Bentel. They're great people, and they do a good job for us here at EVM Media. Their number is 541-323-9114, 541-323-9114. That's Bentel. We're also powered by WebFormix, WEBFORMIX. You can check them out at webformix.com. They make it possible for us to take high-speed internet on location here in Central Oregon and stream video from Prineville. Done a number of shows from Prineville. And anywhere in Bend, Redmond, Madras, Prineville, Powell Butte, Madras, Prineville, Redmond, and Bend, and Powell Butte, and be able to stream shows from those communities. So thank you to the good folks at WebFormix. 541-385-8532 is the number, 541-385-8532. You'll be able to see a replay of this portion of the show on our websites, tjn1.tv for the Christian aspect of the show, and then eagle1.tv for the Eagles Wings part of the show, including this morning's show. So, it's Friday, TGIF. Make sure you check out Courageous, opening in theaters across the country, including at the Bend Old Mill District and the Old Mill Cinema, Regal Cinema in the Old Mill District, tonight. It'll be showing, I believe, in Studio 5 at the Old Mill Regal Cinemas. You have a great morning. I'm Dave Adams. This is a production of EVM Media. You have a great day, and we'll catch you later. We will catch you this weekend, and we will be in Myrtle Point and the coast and so on and so forth. So check out our website. We'll be uploading some videos, and we're still working on scheduling some live webcasts. For sure we'll be on live Monday morning from the Myrtle Point area. Until then, you have a great weekend.